This podcast contains spoilers, explicit language, and is not meant for anyone younger than 13. Do not harass any of the names mentioned in this episode. Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to John vs. Film. And just to get this out of the way, I'm going to just be doing both John vs. Critic and my initial thoughts and well, not my initial thoughts, but my likes and dislikes and all that. Like my thoughts on John vs. Critic all in one go. I know I made that sound a lot more complicated, but really I'm just doing everything more in one take. Honestly, after doing the last two Mamoru Hosoda films I've recorded, it's probably going to just be a smoother experience for me overall. But anyway, with that, cleaning out of the attic, I guess. I don't know what else to call it right now. That little bit of news out of the way. Let's go right into my thoughts on this week's movie. And what is it? It is Castle of Cagliostro. It's the first movie I want to talk about in our Lupin the Third, Lupin the Third month. I don't know why I wanted to sing it, but I mean, you gotta admit, the Lupin the Third theme song is pretty catchy. And I feel like this is probably gonna be, since there's a lot of Lupin the Third movies, this is probably gonna be, uh, I'm just gonna have like several Lupin the Third months, but this is the first one, and what better way to start off with what is arguably the best Lupin the Third movie, which I no, like it's not even a point of argument. Everybody who's seen Lupin the Third, like, or is like a Lupin the Third fan, will say, well, most of them will say, Cagliostro is the best Lupin the Third movie. It's just hands down. But let me go and okay, I just gotta get out of this way. It's kind of difficult for me to talk about it because what has been said that you know that hasn't been said essentially. Hey, like everybody, like this is the one Lupin the Third movie that's been talked about the most. So, but hopefully, I have something else to say that has not been said, or if not, well, at least I gave it a shot. So anyway, as we have done before in this podcast, I start off with the things I like, and as going forward, I think I probably mentioned this in last month's reviews. I kind of record these pretty early, you know, so it's been a while since I last record. But anyway, here we go. 5 things I like, and then after the 5 things I dislike. And you know what? I'm gonna add one thing after, which is like an overall thought. So anyway, what did I like about Castle of Cagliostro? Well, first of all, I know this is like Lupin the Third, Castle of Cagliostro, or Lupin the Third in general, is tend to be known for its action. But what I really like about Castle of Cagliostro is like the slow and more quiet moments this movie brings forward, where we get to see Lupin, you know, kind of just like contemplating, or thinking like we get that shot at the beginning, near the beginning of the movie, where he's just sitting in the palace ruins, just kind of looking into the water, and it stays on that shot for quite a bit. It's a nice quiet moment to show that there's something on Lupin's mind. Other than that, there's this really beautiful and touching moment where Lupin and Clarice, they have, you know, like Lupin finally infiltrates the tower and they have this really nice, again, quiet, very sweet moment where Lupin's, declares that he's going to steal her away from the Count. And he does a little magic trick, a little show off. It's such a beautiful moment. But I think the one standout, slow, quiet moment is, I think, obviously, the opening credits. I think it's such a great way to start off this movie, even though ironically, it sh- it is the opposite of this movie in some ways because the opening credits is very much just Lupin and Jigen traveling to Cagliostro, but and it plays this very soothing song, Fire Treasure, and it's a very nice song, and it's very chill, very, you know, nice feeling. We get some really beautiful shots, and we just get to soak in the art during the credits. I like the opening credits. My favorite shot, I think, is when Lupin, or at least favorite moment, is near the end of the opening credits. Is when Lupin and Jigen are staring up at the stars, and Lupin goes down to light a cigarette. It looks so good. It's again, it's very like just to. I'm not even gonna try to say that word because I'm gonna screw it up, uh, but it's so opposite to the rest of the movie where most of it is action and comedy. Just it's like it's the calm before the storm essentially. And after that, like most other movies, like in the Lupin the Third franchise, they tend to go the more action or comedy route, you know, where they play the classic Lupin the Third theme or some rendition of it. That very high, high pace, action instead of the quiet, serene fire treasure. I think it was a great way to start this movie. You know, even though it doesn't exactly set the tone, but it also is like something to be like, this is your moment to just relax, get yourself comfortable, you know. I don't know. I really liked it. My next point for what I like is the gorgeous, like, this movie has some really great directing and the, animation art, the anime, know, and just great direction overall. And that's no surprise. Hayao Miyazaki is known to be one of the best anime directors out there, and just great directors in general, especially in animation. He has such a keen eye for details, and he also knows how to make something very beautiful, very, you know, like go right into the hearts just by visuals alone. He knows to like he has very much an artistic eye, so the art style and animation, they're beautiful. The direction is great. Like I said, again, let me emphasize the details. I mean, first of all, the castle layout. Miyazaki is known for his work on castles, so it's no surprise that Castle of Cagliostro is really great with its like little like its layout in general is pretty interesting. It makes for a really good location, and just seeing how everything works. But then you get to more smaller details, like I really love seeing Lupin's Fiat. It's being so messy inside. Where we see junk and garbage, and we get to see the ashtray is literally full of Jigen and Lupin's cigarette butts from the trip to Cagliostro. It's such a great. It like really adds to the movie, and there's like in the animation department, there's some really like blink and you miss the details, but they do really add. During the car chase scene, the famous one, which I'll get to in a moment, but during that chase scene, we get to see, Lupin has to go up the hill and drive through, a bunch of trees and bushes, and through, you know, they Jigen and Lupin have to break the windshield, and as they're driving through, the branches, leaves and everything is just hitting, them. And there's just this one moment where a branch really quickly hits Lupin, causing Lupin, head to go back, and then Lupin just quickly snaps forward. But if you pause right there, you get to see the red mark that hit Lupin's face with the tree branch. It's very quick, but it's such a nice detail to show that, yeah, there is no windshield and they're not immune to getting hit by the stuff. It's really great detail. Another, even the acting though, like the character acting, seeing Lupin notice the spy in the restaurant, I thought that was, oh, really great because he didn't notice, like, okay, so we could tell that the spy was watching him, like, even though our focus, so in the restaurant, Lupin and Jigen, they're analyzing the ring that Clarice dropped or gave to Lupin in the movie. They're analyzing it. Lupin's trying to read the inscription. There's a spy from the castle that's sitting in the table right next. So our focus, is on Lupin and Jigen, but we see, the camera is also keeping, you know, that guy's face, at least in the view of us. And when we get to see his like face change as soon as he sees the ring, like he does a little squint. And Lupin actually notices before he leaves, the table, as he's talking to the waitress, he does a little quick glance at the spy before the spy gets up. It shows it's those little tiny moments I really appreciate. And it's when creators do such a good job at details, when they pay attention to the details, that's what makes for a great movie. Um, but again, just, you know, and besides the details, I just really want to touch up on the art style again, real quick. It's just such gorgeous art. The There is a distinct color palette being used throughout the movie. There's a lot of greens, a lot of blues. You see that throughout the entire movie. You know, like the background art is just absolutely gorgeous. You know, and it's so good. Seriously, just go watch it. If you have a 4K Blu-ray player or anything that can play 4K Blu-rays, and have a 4K TV, seriously get this movie on 4K. It is so crisp. It is mm, chef's kiss. Mm, chef's kiss. But and like I really one of the standout shots, or visual, moments, where we see a lot of blue is when we get to see Goemon's real introduction. It's raining, you know, we get to see Goemon is being carried by, you know, a man, a horse wagon, and right, but passing by this wagon is a bunch of vehicles and cars, and we see Goemon facing away from the vehicles, kind of show that Goemon is kind of a man out of time, so to speak. Like he's just out of touch, more connected to the past. But it's also just so beautiful with the general blue palette, the rain just hitting Goemon and the vehicles. It it gives a very stoic sort of vibe to it. And other than that, when it like uh, Miyazaki does a really good job at highlighting the beauty of nature as well. Just the reflections off the water, like the sun reflecting off the water, the hills, the valley, the clouds in the sky. It all just looks beautiful. And I can't stop gushing about it. But let me get down to my third point so I'm not rambling on too much. So, my third point is the action. I really love the action in this movie. It's probably some of the best action ever, portrayed in an animation movie that I've ever seen. Example, I've mentioned this already, the first car chase, which rumor has it that's what inspired Steven Spielberg with Indiana Jones, like Castle of Cagliostro, and this car scene inspired Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Indy, you know, with Indy's own car chase scene. I don't know how true that rumor is. Sometimes you hear these rumors, but there's no site, there's no official source for them, so you don't know. But I would love to believe that's true, and I think, shit, that's fucking cool. Didn't mean to really make that sound like it rhymed, but hey, I'll roll with it. But no, that car chase scene is very great. I mean, first of all, it starts off, you know, right after Lupin, and Jigen, they're kind of just fixing the tire. They're kind of relaxing, look up the sky, and then we see Clarice in a car being chased by a bunch of goons. And then as soon as the song kicks, the da 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 da, you know, it's like all high action. It's the direction and that the choreography, I should say, in that car chase scene is really well done. I'm like, as we get to see, the shots being taken, Lupin dodging out of the way with the Fiat, um, having to go up that hill, the details, like I mentioned before, Jigen having to aim for the car, just, and also the oncoming traffic. It's very good, action scene. And another standout action scene is the clock tower fight at the end, where Lupin is facing off against Count Cagliostro. And what's really, and it is such a great action scene. And even if you haven't seen this movie, there is a chance that you have seen this rendition of a fight as the fight in the clock tower with, just going around the gears and the giant clock tower, having to use that as, to ground footing, to either the character's advantage or disadvantage. It in, it is known to inspire at least two Western media. The first one being The Great Mouse Detective. That, uh, I haven't seen The Great Mouse Detective in years. Very long time, but it's known that there's a fight in Clock Tower between the Sherlock Holmes mouse and the Moriarty mouse or rat. See, like I said, I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but I know there's a clock tower fight scene, just like that. That's similar to Castle of Cagliostro's, but I think another, I don't even want to say more because again, long time since Great Mouse Detective, my memory is very, you know, very much, blurry on how that all played out, but something I'm more aware of, or I remember more because I've seen it a couple times already, is Batman the Animated Series. When they had, introduced the Clock King in his episode, the final fight between the Clock King and Batman was in a clock tower and played out very similar to the climax of, you know, Cagliostro in that clock tower. But they kind of reverse it because in Cagliostro, the fight ends outside on on the hands of the clock. But in Batman, it starts at the hands of the clock as the mayor is kidnapped and tied up to, the clock, and he's gonna be meeting the same fate as Cagliostro does in the movie, unless Batman does it. And then Batman and Clock King, they take the fight into the clock tower, and Clock King really uses the clock tower to his advantage. Like, he kind of owns Batman in the clock tower. It was honestly an unfair fight for Batman. But anyway, that aside, it does go to show you though that this how much this fight scene and this movie has influenced a lot of Western media as the time goes on. And my friend, he showed me that it's possible that one of the Nathan Drake Uncharted games made a reference to Cagliostro and the Clock Tower, as he showed me that because I went to show Castle Cagliostro to my friend last summer when I was hanging out with him, and he told me that it reminded him of a shot used in Uncharted, and he actually pulled up the clip on YouTube and he showed me, and I will admit it does look very similar. It could be just a coincidence, but I would reckon to believe that Uncharted was definitely referencing Cagliostro. It's very likely, especially since, like, personally, I haven't played through the Nathan Drake games, but I do know Nathan Drake is a thief, so it's understandable that he would probably or at least his developers would take inspiration from the greatest gentleman thief there is, Lupin the Third. Anyway, on to my fourth point of what I like, and that is the characters and their portrayals. Uh, I think because, okay, a little context. Back in the 70s when this movie came out, Lupin was not so much gentlemanly like. He was more of a scoundrel. He wasn't like his grandpa yet. He was very he as the movie does suggest that he was once a womanizer, and in some ways he still is, but depending on which version you watch of Lupin or read of Lupin. But yeah, he was known to be not a good person. He went after ladies for his own lust, but Lupin was still charming. He was very wild, I guess would be the best way to describe Lupin at that time. So, in this movie though, Lupin is more mature. Uh, he is, like, he does now portray, like, in this movie he portrays more of the gentleman thief. He's doing things for actually good reasons, or like, he's more tamed. He's not really chasing after ladies. In fact, he goes, at the end of the movie, Clarice tries to, embrace him and give Lupin a kiss, and Lupin has to, he actually resists himself to fall into his, old ways, and he doesn't kiss Clarice on the lips, but instead just on the forehead. And he even, like, and Clarice was like, "Wait, let me go with you," and Lupin's like, "No, kid, just trust me. This life ain't for you." And it just kind of shows that Lupin has matured. Just like if you think of like manga Lupin or even early anime Lupin, he would have been like, "Oh, really? Oh, yeah!" He'd be all for it. But no, this one's more a bit more riser. He's you know Uh, I think Miyazaki said that he wanted to portray a Lupin that was, has, matured, who has gone through some heists. It's more in the latter years of his career, I get. Not in the way of, it's old man Lupin, but in a way that he's older, he's wiser. He's just more mature and more tame. But other than Lupin, again, whose portrayal is really great. The voice acting is really great, at least in the Japanese dub. Uh, I'm not going to comment on the English dub. There's actually two dub versions. The reason I'm not going to comment on them is because I don't watch them for this, you know, podcast. I've seen them both, but they're not super fresh in my memory. I will say David Hayter is a really great voice actor. That and funny enough, um, since I did mention David Hayter, I actually have a copy of Lupin the Third Castle of Cagliostro storyboards. I got those off of Amazon, and I actually met David Hayter at a convention, and I got him to sign the storyboard book I have. So that's really cool, At least, I got, you know, the book signed by Lupin the Third, which I think that was really cool. But anyway, uh like I think the English dub is great, but again, I don't really want to say too much or just comment because I haven't seen the English dub super recently, but I've seen the movie enough times. I've seen the movie several times. Too many times. Too many times, that would be the best way. But again, back to the Japanese side, the recurring voice actors for Lupin and the gang, they do a great job. Um Jigen still plays the kind of the cool man, but the weird thing is he kind of is subdued a little bit. But I'll get to that later. Goemon, he's still the stoic, serious figure. Zenigata's a blast. Um, but I feel like he was a little tamed in this movie, but I liked it. And Fujiko, I really liked her character, and also to show again, back to Lupin. I think Lupin had the best portrayal in this movie. Is if you look at a lot of Lupin material, Lupin is constantly lusting over Fujiko. He really, wants to, you know, like he's really interested in Fujiko. But here, though, that's not really the case. They acknowledge that Lupin and Fujiko had a thing, for each other, and at the end, Lupin kind of kids, with Fujiko as Fujiko kind of reveals, "Oh yeah, I stole the money mint or the some of the mints, that they use for the counterfeit monies." And Lupin's like, "Oh, hey Fujiko, let me be your best friend." you know, so, that's more of just Lupin trying to get the treasure. But early on, when Fujiko and Lupin first meet, Lupin, it's like, oh, he jokes around. It's like, oh, we haven't seen each other for a year, and this is how you treat me. But Lupin does just straight up ditches Fujiko. you know, After Lupin has all the information he needs. He pulls a Batman, essentially. That disappearing act, where you turn around and then you look back and they're gone. It must have been the wind. But yeah, they were really great. And the new characters, Clarice and Cagliostro, they did a fine job. I really like Clarice here because I think people I think the general sentiment with Clarice is that she's a damsel in distress. She has that archetype. But I'm gonna say give Clarice credit. And by the way, I'm just gonna like double check. I've been saying the character a couple times, but maybe I should just double check. Yeah, Clarice. Okay. You know, as a character, Clarice, she does a lot to help out. Even though, yeah, she needs to be safe, she's not helpless. In fact, she saves Lupin a couple times in the clock tower alone. She actively. I mean, at the beginning of the movie, we've seen her actually successfully escape the castle. Unfortunately, she just got chased down by the Count's men. And but we see her at least be capable of fighting for herself, and she even risks her own life to save Lupin, by like literally trying to be human shield when Lupin was injured. It Clarice is not just a sitting duck, is what I'm getting at. And the final point of what I like about this movie is the music. The music is absolutely great in this movie. I already talked about the opening credits, that song, how beautiful that is. And I also mentioned the da 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 da. I mean, it's just so, it's really good. But other than those two, the soundtrack is still good. It gets, serious when it needs to. It gets bombastic and energetic when it has to. You know, the music also kind of like plays at little moments, just kind of to emphasize an action. That's really great. And there's also just this general jazzy feel to it as well. And Yuji Ono, that's and that's the work of Yuji Ono, and he's known to pretty much be the Lupin the Third composer, so to speak. Like if you look at his IMDb filmography, most of it is all filled with Lupin the Third. He's done other stuff too, but Lupin the Third is what he's known for. And yeah, I can't see anyone else making a Lupin the Third, soundtrack that isn't Yuji Ono. I mean, I guess part one didn't have Yuji Ono, but that's part one. Everything post part two, let's say that. So that's enough of the music. I'll just leave it at that. Music is great. But I'm gonna just do before I get to this, like this kind of just a bonus, like um it's a bonus because it doesn't really have to do with the movie. It's I'm gonna just briefly touch upon the 4K Blu-ray. That is a legit good, release. It's one of the best recent physical media releases I've ever seen because the all right, I already said touched upon the video quality, but again, I just want to emphasize you will not get better quality anywhere else, for this movie unless you get the film print itself and watch it 35 millimeter, on a 35 millimeter projector. Maybe that, but then again, this just you could literally pause the movie and have each frame be a painting that frame off. It is they did a really good job touching up on this film and making the you know the drawings crisp, showing very crisp line work. There's no pixelation. It is just on video alone it is the best release of this movie, and I can't really say much. I haven't seen much of the G Kids release of the Studio Ghibli movies, but I'm going to make the argument to say that, visual quality alone, this is probably one of the better releases of one of Hayao Miyazaki's films, just based on videos. But even out of the video, the audio, you have literally seven different audio options. You got both English dubs available. You have a family-friendly version of the 2000 English dub. You have the Japanese dub, but you also have that in mono and surround, like stereo, and then surround. Like there's generally a lot of audio options, and there's even an audio option to just have the soundtrack isolated. That is something wild. And you also got quite quite a bit of subtitle options as well. You got one for just you know the songs and the signs. You got one that's for the Japanese version. You got one for the hard of hearing, so that's probably more towards the English dub. But yeah, you actually have one that's for hard of hearing, which I appreciate accessibility in my media. I think that's really cool. That's great. That is absolutely great. You know, and more media needs to do that when it comes to physical releases, I guess. And you also have the option to just turn them off completely, which is fine. And then you get to the bonus features, the extras. There's so many. Like there's interviews. You get to watch the entire storyboards linked up with the movie. It is so cool. Seriously, go get the 4K Blu-ray of Lupin the Third, Castle of Cagliostro. I promise you, you will not regret it. But of course, I went all about how much I like this movie. About a little over half an hour. It's time for my dislikes and criticisms, and I have five. But of course, though, these are probably more nitpicks because I'll tell you my thoughts on this movie, my overall thoughts. But the first one is Goemon's and Zenigata's absence in the beginning of the movie. Like, okay, Zenigata is always a charm to have. Like, Zenigata is one of those required ingredients for a successful Lupin the Third movie. Goemon, the weird thing is with Goemon is that, okay, so at the opening we see, like, very opening of the movie before the opening credits, we see Lupin and Jigen steal from a casino, steal a bunch of, like, bags of money. But as they're driving away, when the casino security was going to chase them, we get to see, their cars are cut in half. It shows that Goemon was there for that heist, but he wasn't with Lupin and Jigen. So it's weird. His absence kind of is weird. And also, again, Goemon's also a charm. Like, Goemon is MVP, and he's also OP. I mean, he can literally cut anything in half with his blade. But those are minor nitpicks, and when they do show up, it's cool. Goemon, though, I feel like he didn't have much to do in this movie, unfortunately. Which was sad, but Zenigata, he definitely made up for it after his appearance. Uh, my next point is Jigen kind of gets sidelined in the second half. Like, Jigen was with Lupin, a lot in the first half of the movie as they're going down the Cagliostro and discovering the secret. But after Jigen and Lupin get separated, you know, when trying to infiltrate the castle, Jigen kind of just goes back to their hideout and Lupin continues forward. And yeah, we don't get to see too much of Jigen afterwards or doing super too much. I mean, he doesn't do nothing, He still is involved with the action and stuff. It's just, it gets a little, pushed to the sideline a little. Next point is the villain, Count Cagliostro. Other than him looking like, hang on, let me look his name up. I want to make sure I say it correctly. Uh, oh, I'm just gonna say his first name. I'm not even gonna bother to look up his last name. But anyway, other than Count Cagliostro at the end looking like Char from Gundam, he's just kind of he's a generic villain. He's he's not that intriguing as a villain. He's just kind of the basic evil villain who wants to get the secret treasure, doesn't really care about love. He just kind of cares about wealth and power. He's just kind of bland. I mean, to this movie's credit, he doesn't need to be anything more, but I don't know, maybe just something a bit different or would have been nice, but not essential. This next point, now this is big criticism. This is a big one. It's the legitimately harsh 7.5 to 5 month production time, forcing animators to crunch to get this movie out. Yeah, if you look up the production history of this movie, it very much had a very limited production. I mean, Hayao Miyazaki himself, he wrote, directed the storyboard. He did a lot of work just by himself for this movie, But even then, so Miyazaki himself, he started on the movie 7.5 months, before the movie released, but the animation itself didn't happen till 5 months before the movie's release date. That is, if you know even a little tiny bit how hard it is to do hand drawn animations or just animation in general, 5 months is very, very small window of time, especially for a feature length movie. So having, I couldn't find a source for this, but I remember hearing something a while ago that apparently animators would have even stay till, you know, s- sleep in the office, just to get this movie done. Yeah, I just want to make this criticism out there because the problem with this is that this isn't just a thing that happened in the anime industry back in the late 70s. No, it's a thing that's still going on, where animators are still having to work ridiculous hours with very low pay, and it's not okay. That's the thing that really sucks about anime is that the animators are not treated, you know, fairly. They're not given the time or the money. They It's not healthy for the animators to be constantly put in these crunch situations and that the anime industry has produced. So this I know this is kind of a little tangent, but and this is more of a criticism to the anime industry in general, but I think it still applies to this movie because I feel even though I love this movie and I wouldn't probably change a thing about it, I could guarantee you more time in production would could have probably made a better movie. I think because the thing was the movie was supposed to be in have 4 parts, but the last part got scrapped and the third part had to be rewritten just to make the runtime. You know, so yeah, I feel like if this movie got just more time to the enough time where the animators didn't have to crunch or Miyazaki didn't have to work on storyboards as the animation was starting, this movie could have been better. But it's still a great movie as we got. And like I said, I wouldn't change a thing. But anyway, now on to my final criticism. And what is my final criticism? Well, the fact that this movie is so good that it started a formula for most Lupin movies afterwards. Yeah. See, this is the problem with Castle Cagliostro. It is too good. It is Lupin's second movie, and it's too good. And yeah, like I mentioned, it started a formula of Lupin the Third movies. I mean, since Castle Cagliostro, literally Lupin movies, most of them, or the ones at least I've seen, they all introduced a new female protagonist that will never reappear in a future installment of Lupin. They won't even get mentioned. They have a generic, you know, villain that they stop in the movie. They have this grand adventure heist where Lupin has to save the day essentially. There's a formula that was started with this movie. And again, the problem is that it again, Castle Cagliostro is great. And even the some of the future Lupin third movies that use this formula, they're great as well. But come on, it's 2021. It's been over 40 years. This movie is since came out, and yet the latest movie, Lupin the Third, the first, still uses this formula. I'm just saying, maybe change things up a bit. Just a bit. Don't just maybe don't have the female protagonists, or. But yeah, so anyway, what are my overall thoughts? Well, I'm gonna be honest here. This is my favorite Hayao Miyazaki movie. Now, is it the best Miyazaki movie? No, absolutely not. I will definitely if somebody said, you know, like Spirited Away, Castle in the Sky, Nazca Valley in the Wind, Princess Mononoke, Totoro, they said, well, this is a better movie than Castle Cagliostro, I'll probably be like, yeah, I I think you're right. Those are better movies than Castle Cagliostro. But this is still my favorite Miyazaki movie. Like, yeah, it's probably the most flawed, you know, Miyazaki, like Hayao Miyazaki movie, or one of the most flawed, you know, out there. But to me, the movie's just so fun. I can't ignore, you know, the movie's general sense of having fun, having an adventure. It's just such a refreshing take, and it's the one. And you know what? Maybe it's. I will admit, maybe it partly is because I have a bias towards Lupin the Third, as I really like Lupin the Third material. I really love the characters of Lupin the Third and gang. I will fully admit that bias might be influencing my opinion. But I will also say this is the one Hayao Miyazaki movie I've watched the most. I I don't even know how many times I've seen this. I couldn't even count. I've seen this movie on Blu-ray, on the 4K Blu-ray. I've seen both English dubs. I've seen this movie in theaters. Like seriously, it's my favorite. And again, not the best, but definitely my favorite. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on Castle Cagliostro, but it's time for me to find a review. Uh, a very, very negative review. One that says that this is the worst Miyazaki movie. Well, my friends, that's where we go to IMDb for. And couldn't get a 1 out of 10 star review, but I got a 2 out of 10 star review. So that's probably the closest we're going to get. And I think this has enough bad faith in it, or just enough negativity to make light on. And yes, this is John versus Critics. And the title of this IMDb user review is Dumb, 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 Dumb. It was written actually July of 2021. And this review is written by none other than Dr. Phil. So what does Dr. Phil have to say about Castle of Cagliostro? Well, here we go. Dr. Phil says, I haven't seen really Dr. Phil recently. I haven't seen any of his like clips or anything. I know he's not that good of a person, probably. But the thing is, I kind of want to try to mimic his voice, but um, let me try his Texan accent, or if I can remember it right. I've seen most of Miyazaki films, but somehow always missed this one. Last week, I saw it was number 20 on the list of best animations of all time. Voted on at the 2003 Laputa Animation Festival. 8 positions ahead of Spirited Away, which I think is Miyazaki's best. So I finally watched it. Well, it's good, he watched it. And I guess, I'm not the only one who thinks, you know, who likes Castle Cagliostro better than Spirited Away. Well, what is Dr. Phil's take though? That's the important part. Well, Dr. Phil says, my take, Miyazaki has gone a lot better since then. The villain is less rounded than Snidely Whiplash. Who is Snidely Whiplash? Let me look it up. Snidely Whiplash. Oh, he's okay, he's like a basic, Dudley Do-Right villain, I guess. I've never seen Dudley Do-Right, so but he's the mustache twirling type of villain. But anyway, also weirdly, when I googled that up, a picture of Dick Dastardly popped up as well. he's not Snidely Whiplash, but anyway, Dr. Phil, what's your prognosis? The princess is as bland as Princess Peach from Mario Brothers, but more annoying. Hey, hey, Dr. Phil, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that. See, well, first of all, we don't allow Princess Peach slander on this podcast. All right, if you read, uh, was it the Mario Bros? I don't have the comic on me, but it's the I think like Super Mario Adventures or something like that. It was the comic that was released on Nintendo Power. If you see Princess Peach in that comic, holy frick, she is a badass. She is 100% badass. She is the one that charges after Bowser. She's the one that actually saves herself from getting kidnapped initially. In the story. Like, just as a side note, go read that comic. It's seriously funny, and Princess Peach is a fucking badass. Like, there's a panel where literally you see fire in her eyes. It is so epic. But anyway, other than that, I just went on and said that Clarice was freaking cool. Risking her life, to save Lupin, actually saving Lupin. So, you know, like, she's not the most, interesting character, she, but she's not even annoying. Like, she's badass. I'm going to put Clarice on the badass, roster. Anyway, but what does Dr. Phil think of Lupin himself? Well, Lupin is supposed to be a super genius and the best in the world, yet rushes into every situation with no plan, relying entirely on a moronic overconfidence and the certainty that the laws of physics don't apply to him. I mean, Lupin in physics, the physics tends to not apply to Lupin, in most versions of Lupin the Third. But um, I think Lupin Third, he is portrayed, as very smart. Like, it's not that he always has a plan. It's the fact. So the thing about Lupin's genius in this movie is that he is adaptive. If he had a plan for everything, but the plan goes wrong and he couldn't adapt to it, that wouldn't make him very genius like, would it? No, it's the fact that he could literally, adapt on the fly. He is overconfident for a reason because he knows he's gonna get out of it. He already, is just like, he's Lupin. That's the best way to describe him. But just a real quick note, I forgot to mention this in my like, so sorry, Dr. Phil, I need to interrupt you for a second. But if you allow me to, I just want to say I really like how Lupin's gear is very handcrafted in this movie. It's not high tech. It's very low tech actually. But I really just love how handmade everything Lupin's gear is. From his, that belt crank that lowers his, grappling hook watch down. It's really cool. Really cool shit. But anyway, Dr. Phil continues on by saying, the only potentially interesting characters are Goemon and Fujiko. The only interesting thing done with any character is making, spoiler, Inspector Zenigata briefly team up with Lupin. But instead of using this to give Zenigata some death, it callously thrown away at the end, when Lupin's heroism has no impact on Zenigata, who returns to his unthinking hatred of and obsession with capturing Lupin. Alright, alright. Dr. Phil, you're supposed to be a psychiatrist, am I right? And by the way, I'm sorry. Just a heads up, I apologize for my poor Dr. Phil, impression. If I've seen a clip of him recently, I could probably pull it off, but I'm not doing that in the middle of recording. But let me get you on the psyche of Zenigata. Zenigata's entire purpose in life is chasing Lupin. And the thing is, Yeah, you're expecting this to change the status quo, but the status quo is Lupin is still a thief, and Zenigata is still a cop who is, you know, has to catch him. The thing is, Lupin's past, crimes of thief, being a thief didn't, stop or like his past, it's like, well, he's still Zenigata still needs to capture him for that. But even then, Lupin at the end of the movie goes back to being a thief. So in turn, Zenigata still has to chase Lupin. And you see, and like, and this movie's like review, I should say, is very recent. So I'm going to bring up some recent Lupin material, Lupin the Third Part 4, where we see Zenigata finally capture, Lupin. I mean, it's not the first time he's captured Lupin, but this one, it seems more like Lupin can't get out, and we get to like it's a very good episode in Part 4 where we see Zenigata being the only one guarding Lupin's cell in this very isolated, island. It's just, like literally Zenigata does not hate Lupin. He probably loves the guy. He's Lupin's the only man that gives Zenigata purpose and enjoyment in his life, to be perfectly honest. Zenigata needs Lupin. He needs to chase Lupin. That's Zenigata. And we could talk about, what Zenigata could do to get away from his obsession, you know, but really you have to analyze, that that is Zenigata's character. So Dr. Phil, I'm kind of disappointed, about that since you're supposed to have been, a psychiatrist, or at least know about psychology. I'm not sure about your credentials. And I'm questioning your credentials now. Maybe what people are saying are right, are right about you. But anyway, to continue on, Dr. Phil says, there's no tension, a common weakness in Miyazaki films, but especially bad here since it is supposed to be a Bond-like film. In this case, it results not having, it's a, it, sorry. In this case, it results from not having no action, but from having lots of action is which is merely amusing because it's been made clear in the first sequence that no harm can ever come to the heroes. The plot is your basic rescue the princess from the baddie and plays out like a video game moving from puzzle to puzzle. And do we need okay, so no tension. Really? Mm, I would argue there's tension. I would argue there are moments of times, where Lupin, almost died. Fake. Other than the big climactic, you know, big, part at like end of the second act, I should say, where Lupin gets shot. Other than that, there is tension. There's not the look in hindsight. Yeah, everybody knows Lupin's going to get away. It's more of the how is he going to get away? It's like watching an escape artist. There is naturally tension. You wonder, how is this escape artist going to get out? How are they going to do it? It's not so much that, even though, yeah, we know they're probably going to do it, but we want to know how. That's where the tension comes from. Is when we don't know how it's going to happen. Even when we know how, it's still entertaining. And besides, you know, uh, the thing is, not every movie needs to be telling a very rich thematic story. It doesn't need to be saying, not every movie needs to have a message. Some movies can be just fun action rides. This movie wants to be a fun action ride, and it does so really well. It does what what it tends to do. But what does Dr. Phil have to say about the ending, though? Let's find out. The ending, here's the spoiler, is a head-slappingly stupid. Why would anyone build an impregnable castle 200 feet downstream of a dammed up up lake? Dammed up lake with a floodgate you can open at any time to destroy the castle. Well, first of all, the castle. oh, Was it? I think the basement got flooded, but. Sorry, it was starting to get late last night. I know the clock tower got destroyed. I don't remember if the castle itself got destroyed. But anyway, jokes. The thing is, it wasn't exactly an easy on and off switch now, was it, Doc? We saw what happened to the villain when he did it. He kind of died. He got smushed by the two hands when the clock struck noon. It was kind of, that little crunch sound. Yeah, that was a little disturbing. But yeah, he had to literally climb the outside of the clock tower in order for that to happen. I'm just saying. And again, I don't think the castle itself was destroyed. It was the clock tower that got destroyed. And who knows? Maybe that wouldn't have happened if there wasn't a fight in the castle. Because I don't remember, as I recall, Dr. Phil, in the fight, Lupin used a gear to close off an entrance, and that gear probably could have been, used to not destroy the castle. I mean, that gear that Lupin left loose during the battle could have done some serious damage. So maybe, just maybe, it wasn't just the dam being opened up. Maybe that had something to do with that. But even then, again, look what the villain had to do to order to activate the damn thing. Pun intended, I guess. Well, pun was not intended, but I decided to make it intended. sorry, but anyway, Dr. Phil's rant seems to end with the film seems to have no thematic content at all. The main source of interest is watching Lupin jump around like a goofball. There are some nice visuals, the castle, the final showdown between Lupin and was his name on the hands of the tower clock. That's about it. I don't think that's correct, Doc. And also, was his name? But I just to let you know, Doc, it's literally in the title. It's literally in the title of the movie. But anyway, thank you, Dr. Phil, for that wonderfully entertaining review. Uh, but I believe that is all the time we have for this episode, going a little bit over an hour. But anyway, I want to say, do my whole social media round. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, on YouTube. Subscribe there, please. My plan is to post more content on YouTube sometime soon. Hopefully by the time this, you know, podcast episode actually comes out, there should hopefully start to be more content rolling out. But yeah, subscribe there. This podcast is available on YouTube. It's also available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And do me the biggest favor and have a fantastic day. Take care.